When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and this is the PR Training Lab. I've been doing this pretty much once a month for this year, so you can get to know me better, know my process better, and understand how I make custom training plans for all my athletes. Last year, I gave away 10 free custom training plans for this series, and it's been really fun, really successful, and I've been getting great feedback from all of you. So if you are interested in possibly being the next one on the PR Training Lab and getting a free custom training plan made by me live right on this show, all you have to do is first write an Apple Podcast review. Got to have you do that because that really helps the show and helps its reach. It's free and super easy, even if you're an Android user. Once you do that, go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab and you can enter to win. I put all the questions that I ask every runner in the show notes so that you can follow along. Today, I'm doing a training plan for Kyle. He's 43 years old and he is training for Grandma's, which is a marathon in Minnesota in June. He found out about me through Runners Connect. That was the last coaching service that I worked for before going all in on the Planted Runner. So I'm happy to know that a lot of RC folks came over to the Planted Runner and followed me from there. So let's talk a little bit about Grandma's, the race that Kyle will be training for. Now, I've not personally run this marathon, but I've trained lots of athletes who have. So it's a little unusual to have a June race, but Minnesota is far enough north that it's usually fairly cool. The average temperature is 49 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which works out to be about 9 to 22 degrees Celsius. In 2024, they had about 7,400 finishers, which makes it the 10th largest marathon in the United States. The course is mostly flat. It's a point-to-point marathon, but it has some rollers. It's not flat like Chicago. It is a little rolly, but no major hills, nothing really to worry too much about. But you do want to be practicing some hills when you are in training. So I would not suggest that you do extra hill repeats. Most people are great with doing hill repeats once or twice a month. You do want to work on uphills and downhills, but I would say for the most part, working on rolling hills on your easy runs or some of your long runs is the best way to learn how to run hills. Hill repeats are amazing, but I think of those as more of a drill. Those are about speed and strength and power. They're not necessarily the best for getting you used to running marathon pace for a long time on hills. So don't just run up and down a bunch of hills to get yourself better at hills. It will help you get better at hills. But if you are trying to run a marathon on a hilly course, the best way to do it is run hills nice and easy as often as you can. So let's figure out what Kyle's goals are. He says it would be nice to PR, so under 3:41:47, but my main focus is to finally incorporate strength training. Okay. So 341 works out to be 828 per mile or 516 per kilometer. So that is the pace that he is hoping for. But working on strength training is great. He says, finally incorporate strength training. So it sounds like he's been running a while without really focusing on strength. And that is, in a way, a good thing because that's a place that he can really improve. You really can improve your durability. You can improve your power and strength, and you overall can make running easier if you do some strength training. You don't have to do a lot. You don't want to train like a bodybuilder. You want to do enough to help build your body a little bit, build your strength, but mostly it's to avoid weaknesses. So what happens in a marathon if you're not sort of universally strong is that your muscles get tired, right? That makes sense. But once the big muscles like the glutes, the quads get tired halfway through the race or a little bit later in the race, they kind of give up. And what happens is your body will start to recruit smaller muscles that are not designed to do the job of the bigger muscles. So the calves, for example, will take over when the glutes get tired. And that leads to all sorts of problems. You could start cramping or you could start to get an injury. And that's all because the glutes are not strong enough, not the calves. The calves are not designed to push your body forward. They're there for a reason, but they are small muscles, relatively speaking, compared to the big ones of your butt. So getting stronger, especially in your core and glutes, calves, quads, hamstrings, everything, basically every muscle you want to get strong, but you really want to focus on the muscles that power running the most. And that is your thighs and your butt, right? So that is great that he's finally going to incorporate strength training. All of my custom training plans include strength training exercises to do throughout the week. I have some of my own on YouTube, but I also incorporate strength training videos from trainers that I like. Now, what I do is have workouts that you can do at home. You don't have to have a gym. You need to have a few little weights at home. You could do it all with body weight, but I think that's not enough for most runners, but you don't need to invest a fortune if you are working out from home. If you do have a gym membership, great. But if you don't, any of these videos that I recommend can be done with minimal equipment at home. All right, back to Kyle. How long have you been running regularly? Since 2015. So he's got about 10 years under his belt. I asked if he has any current or recurring injuries. He says no injuries, but my left piriformis tends to lock up during higher mileage training, and that affects my sciatica nerve. Okay, so quick anatomy lesson here. The piriformis is a muscle that runs from the spine through your butt and goes to the top of the thighs, and the sciatic nerve can run underneath. So the sciatic nerve is a nerve that is in a different spot for some people. It's not always in the same spot, but for some people, it gets really irritated when the muscle above it or around it to the side, everybody's slightly different. When that muscle is working too hard, it irritates the nerve and it can be quite painful. What makes it worse is a lot of our sedentary lifestyle, sitting a lot, driving a lot, can sometimes really, really irritate it. So what you want to do if you have this type of injury, he says it's not an injury, more of an irritation. Well, it's piriformis syndrome is really a classic runner's overuse injury. It's very, very common. So I don't know if he got it from running, but it's pretty common. So the good news is there are physical therapy exercises that you can do for this. So things like clamshells, donkey kicks, fire hydrants, that kind of thing, where you're really sort of isolating that left side, that's the side that bothers him, and working that muscle. You want to strengthen and you want to stretch the muscles that are affected and support that area. So if he can get a stronger butt, it might help the sciatica. Now, sciatica is not always that simple. People who are not runners have this issue, but definitely getting stronger is going to improve the situation. especially since he says it happens during higher mileage. So it happens when the muscle starts to get tired, or it happens when he gets to higher mileage that he has not sustained in a while. So if he's doing something longer, faster, harder than he's used to, then the muscles can protest a little bit. So we really want to make sure with Kyle that we build him up gradually and not go too high of mileage if this is becoming a problem. Now, I don't know if that means higher mileage weekly. That's kind of what I'm assuming. Or he means it tends to lock up during higher mileage runs. So maybe his long runs can't be quite so high. Not quite sure there, but I suspect, if it's a true overuse injury, which I suspect it is, that it's when his weekly mileage gets up higher, he can't quite handle it as much. So what we could do instead of more running is do more cross training. So we'd want to do something aerobic that does not put pressure on the area. So biking could be an option, unless that sitting motion, when you're sitting on a bike, that might irritate piriformis too. He could also do something like the elliptical, swimming, hiking, walking, lots of other things. But we want to make sure that he is doing something low impact and still aerobic. So lots of options there if more running is not going to work out. What are your recent, in the past 6 to 12 months, race times and distances? So I asked this question because I want to get a sense of his current fitness. How fit is Kyle right now? How should I set his paces? So it would be great if he had just run a marathon last fall, for example. That would give me a sense of where he is physically. Or if maybe he has been training for a 5K for a little while, if he has a 5K time, that I could plug into a race equivalency calculator, and that would give me a hint of his marathon time. Now, these calculators should really be called estimators because they are not perfect. Your 5K time does not guarantee whatever the equivalent is in the marathon, because those calculators assume that you've trained equally for the 5K and the marathon. It also assumes that you're equally talented at each one. We know that's not true for anyone. You know, the best marathoners in the world are not going to be the best 5K runners, and vice versa. Sometimes that can happen with the truly elite people. They grow into the marathon after being really good at the 5K, but we're normal people here, right? We're not talking about the elites. We don't train for this professionally, so we're not good at all the distances equally. We pick one we like and we train hard for that usually. So let's see what Kyle has done in the past. He ran grandma's last year in 2024 and he got 4:08:21. Okay, hold on now. So he got 4:08 last year and he wants to improve by 28 minutes. That is a tall order, but let's read a little bit more about this. This race was cold and rainy. I knew I wouldn't be near a PR, so I didn't pay attention to pace. I enjoyed the scenery, had some brief conversations with others running around me, and interacted with the spectators. A lot of high fives to little kids. Love that. This was actually my most enjoyable marathon because of that. I did freeze after the finish line, though. Raynaud's kicked in. Okay, so let's stop and take a look at this. I like the way that Kyle turned his lemons into lemonade. He knew that his day, probably because of the terrible weather, wasn't going to be the day that he was going to get a PR. So he enjoyed the race, forgot about the time, and just had a party. That is amazing. I think everybody should do that if they just know that their dream goal is out the window and they can find a way to enjoy the race. That is such a talent. I personally could never do that. I was always too stuck on the time to be able to do that. So I always admire people who can do that. Okay, he did freeze after the finish line. Raynaud's kicked in. So what he's talking about, if you've never heard of that, Raynaud's syndrome is a circulatory problem where usually your limbs, so your hands and your feet, will turn white or yellow with cold. So I have never been diagnosed with it, but I think I have a touch of it. I need to wear gloves at about 58 degrees Fahrenheit. My hands get so cold. And it sounds like this is happening to Kyle as well. So what I recommend to people who suffer from this is obviously gloves. Wear gloves when other people are not wearing gloves. For a race, maybe you can have throwaway gloves, or you can tuck them in a pocket if you do get too hot. I also recommend that you invest in a big box of hot hands. So hot hands are the things that skiers put in their gloves or in their mittens to keep you warm. Those are a lifesaver if you are training or racing in really cold temperatures. It's typically not something that's dangerous, but you don't want to lose circulation to your limbs, obviously. It's also can be very painful. So keeping those toes and fingers warm is definitely something that you need to think about. Okay, what else has he raced recently? He did a half marathon last September. Fabulous. Okay, maybe we can use this half marathon to figure out what Kyle's paces should be. Okay, he did it in 1:54:19. Okay, so rule of thumb with half marathons is you double it and add 10 minutes. So that also puts him over 4 hours for the marathon. So he wants to get, remember, 3:41. So that is still a big, big jump. Let's see. He says, for this race, a buddy wanted to finish under 2 hours, so I paced him. Okay, so he was pacing. He was going slower than he could on purpose. That's a better sign. But that means we don't know where Kyle's fitness is at all. So we know that it is somewhere under 4 hour finishing time, I suspect. Do we think it's all the way down at 3:41? Don't know. What I would suggest for Kyle, since right now we're recording this in March, if he could find a 5K to run just as hard as he possibly can, that would give us a little hint of what his high end speed would be. If he's not training for that right now, then that wouldn't. So if he's just jogging and keeping base miles right now and he busts out a 5K, that's not going to quite tell us the exact story, but it's kind of better than nothing. So what I would do setting his paces is, this is honestly a tough one because I don't know how hard that 1:54 half was for him. So maybe we would use that and give him a couple minutes. I don't know. So this is a tricky one. We need something to guide us to where his current fitness is. So if he's not going to race, if we can't find any race, what I would do is give him something kind of conservative. I would not set his paces at his goal pace, because we are training for that goal. That by definition means we are not that fit yet. So it's got to be a slower pace than his 8:28 per mile or 5:16 per kilometer. So we're not setting his marathon pace at 8:30 right now. We're setting it slower than that. So then we would see how his workouts goes. If his easy pace is very easy, great. That's the way it should be. Your easy pace should actually feel very slow. But if he's able to do his workouts, he's able to do them and they're challenging but doable, he always can get through them and feels like they're a good effort, but not too much. He feels like he's holding back at the beginning, and then at the end, he has to give a little more, but never everything. If he finishes a hard workout and he knows that he can do one more, but wouldn't want to, that's a great sign that we got that your pace is aligned. So a couple ways to know how his paces should line up, but we're going to need a couple of weeks at least, maybe more, to kind of feel out those paces and see how they fit him. How many miles or kilometers per week do you typically run? He typically runs 20. So when we're about 3 months out from a marathon, I like my runners to be up to about 30 miles a week or 50K. Not everybody's up there, but that is a really nice base to go ahead and start getting into marathon training. When you're in marathon training, maybe you'll get up to 40 or 45 miles per week. It's different for everybody. Some people do well with higher mileage. Some people absolutely do not. If you cannot handle high mileage because of an old injury or it's just not working for you, hopefully you can do cross training to keep up the aerobic benefit if you can't do more running. I like to have my marathon runners run 4 days a week at a minimum. Again, you can get away with 3, but that's only if you're doing more cross training. Some people do 5, 6, 7. If you're up to 7 days a week of running, I hope that you're still taking a rest day at least every 10 days. I think that is absolutely critical. Most runners, especially runners over 40, absolutely should not be running 7 days a week in marathon training. Now, if you love running every single day and you're doing a mile streak or something like that, go ahead and you do you. But I'm talking about hard marathon training where you're doing serious workouts and then you're doing easy runs and then you're having long runs. If you are doing that kind of intense training, I really think that everybody needs a day off. People are going to argue with me. I can run every single day and it's totally fine. You might be able to, but I really see a huge benefit from a full rest day. And that does not mean lying on the couch all day unless you really want to. That's fine too. Active recovery. So you're still walking, you're still moving around. Maybe you're doing some light yoga, but rest days are absolutely critical. That is when our muscles really grow. If you're constantly tearing down your muscles by running every single day, then you're really not giving your muscles the chance to grow like they could. And in my opinion, you're wasting your time. So rest is just as important as the run. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. One thing that I've learned recently is that the most important relationship that you will ever have in your life is with you. So you better treat yourself well. One of the simplest ways to do that is to make sure you're well hydrated before, during, and after every run. Every morning while I wait for my coffee to brew, I am grabbing a stick of Liquid IV so my workout hydration is ready to go. Right now, I've got raspberry lemonade stocked up, which almost makes me feel like summer is right around the corner. In each packet, you get 8 vitamins and nutrients, 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, and no artificial sweeteners. And it's non-GMO and, of course, vegan. Break the mold and own your own ritual. Just 1 stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Treat yourself to extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. Back to Kyle. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage you've ever run, and how long ago was that? So he ran 30 miles during the first week of June last year. So that was one of his last weeks before, that's probably 3 weeks out from Grandma's last year. So that is actually what I would like him to start at. So he's probably not there yet. He filled out this form a little while ago, so hopefully he's at a little higher than 20 now. We're going to have to start him at, a conservative amount and build him. But hopefully, if his piriformis can handle it, we should get up a little bit higher than that. 34, 35 miles a week is not terrible. I don't want it to sound like that is terrible, but most people, the vast majority of runners do a little bit better when they're running a little bit more, especially those who are really trying to get a PR, really trying to go for a faster time than they have gone before. What days of the week does he currently run? Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, this is great. Very well balanced. He hopefully is going to be running long on Sunday, and Saturday he's running the day before. Always like to see a run the day before the long run, and then to have your other 2 days, at least one of those is speed, nice and spread out. So he's got 3 off days per week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That is perfect. How long is your average or most recent long run? He said 7 miles. So again, he filled this out a little while ago. Hopefully he's built up a little higher than that now. When we are 3 months out from your marathon, I'd like you to get up to about 14 miles. 12 miles is okay. for your long run. So that is so that we can build you up to your long run. So some people will only build to 16 miles for their longest long run. That's about 25 kilometers. And that is okay. You think that that is not enough, but it really can be, especially if you are a runner who takes 3 or 3.5 hours to run 25 kilometers or 16 miles. So the reason we do that is because we are simulating a longer long run the day before with a steady run. So you kind of are putting those two runs together. You have a steady run the day before that kind of pre-fatigues your legs, and then you run the long run. So you really need to add those two runs, those back-to-back runs, add those together. And that is how you train for the marathon. Once you start running 3 hours, 3.5 hours or more, you get diminishing returns on your investment, your injury risk goes up, and the benefits that you get from that run go down. So far better to split that up. If you can't split it up over 2 days, but you can split it up into 2 runs, especially if you are a runner that simply is not able to get in enough miles in those 3 to 3.5 hours, that is okay too. If you are going to double, just know that that's an advanced technique and you need to eat more to support that because your metabolism is being stimulated twice a day instead of once. So it's not quite the calories in, calories out you might think it is. Obviously, physics is still in play. It's always calories in, calories out, but you will be a little more stimulated going out twice than just one long run. So you will have to eat a little more to sustain a double versus a single. What days of the week does Kyle prefer his speed days, Tuesdays or Thursdays? Again, that's perfect. What day of the week does he take a full rest day, which is no running or cross training? And he said, I generally don't take full rest days unless I really need to. Okay, well, you just heard me talk about rest days, so let's see what he is doing instead. What are your non-negotiables when it comes to training days? He said, on Fridays, it can be hard to fit in a run if my wife and I go out or if we do something with the kids after I'm done working. Aw, okay. Well, that's sweet. So take Friday off, Kyle. That's perfect. The family sometimes comes first. You know, it is important to treat yourself. It is important for you to stay fit. It is important for you to be an example to your kids. So you definitely need to put your oxygen mask on first before you help others. Your kids will see you going after your goals and taking care of yourself, and they will see that as an example of what a good adult does. So yes, always let them see that they are not number one in your life, that you are number one in your life, and taking care of yourself makes everything better. They will get so much more out of that lesson than sacrificing yourself for them all the time. But I love this, that you take your wife out. Awesome. Date night. Or you do something with the kids. Fabulous. I like you so much already, Kyle. This is great. What are your favorite kinds of running workouts? He likes interval workouts. Great. I'll give him plenty of those. What are your least favorite kinds of running workouts, or what do you struggle with? He says, long runs when my piriformis acts up. Okay, so this is part of the mystery solved, not just the weekly mileage. It is the long runs that hurts his piriformis. Sometimes he also struggles with maintaining pace during speed workouts. Okay. Struggles maintaining pace. So he can get the pace at the beginning, but he can't maintain it. So that tells me that his paces are a touch too fast, because we want to set our paces so that we can do it. We never want a workout that you simply cannot do. You simply cannot get there. We want it to be challenging, but doable, always doable. Basically, if it's on a scale of 1 to 10, your hardest workout should be an 8. And yes, there are going to be some days that stuff is not happening. You don't feel well. You're stressed out. You didn't sleep. You had a fight with your spouse. You know, it's raining, it's cold, it's hot, yada, yada. You know, there's always going to be a day where it is not happening, but it's not because of your fitness. It's because of all sorts of external factors that you can't do the workout or finish the workout. But I'm talking about on a general basis, if you're struggling to hit your paces, They're too fast. I will never assign you something I don't think you can do. So if that is happening, it's time to put your ego in the back seat, slow your paces down, and get a workout that you can nail. Okay. If you are not hitting your paces are too fast. Okay. What kinds of non-running physical activities or cross-training do you do each week, and when do you do them? Kyle says, I'm a carpenter, so I do a lot of manual labor during the week. That's also been my excuse for not cross-training. Okay, so I'm not sure if he means that's his excuse for not strength training. You don't have to cross-train if you're a runner. Cross-training can be beneficial. If you do too much of it, it's going to take away from your running, but you absolutely do not have to be a biker to be a good runner or be a swimmer to be a good runner. You can just run as you're training. And then of course, mobility and strength training and all of that stuff, but you do not have to cross-train unless you cannot get in enough running because of some reason, because you can't handle the impact or because your piriformis is acting up, something like that. So, but doing a lot of manual labor during the week. So I don't know what kind of carpenter he is. If he is like a Finnish carpenter or making furniture, maybe that's not as labor intensive as someone who's doing framing, for example, where you're lifting 2x4s all day and lifting sheets of plywood all day. That kind of stuff is very labor intensive. That is probably a form of strength training for sure, but you also can get unbalanced. You know, if you're picking up a sheet of plywood and putting it over your head, he's probably always doing it with his dominant arm. He's probably not, squatting in perfect form to lift that thing over his head, right? He's not lifting a 2x4 or a sheet of plywood the way you would lift a barbell, right? So you'll find that people who do manual labor for a living, unless they are very self-aware, they tend to have imbalances. They tend to have bigger dominant sides, right? Because if he's right-handed, he's probably not swinging a hammer with his left hand, right? He's probably not drilling with his left hand. He's probably doing everything with his right hand. And in some people who do manual labor like this, you will find major differences in balances between the two sides of the body. So that is something to consider unless you are ambidextrous, Kyle, maybe have a conscious effort to do some things with your non-dominant hand when you're lifting at work. Because I bet if you've never thought about it before, you are bigger on your dominant side, and that will translate into running. So let's see, his piriformis issue is on his left side. Does that have anything to do with him being right-handed and doing strong stuff at work? I have no idea. He has not told me what-handed he is. He could be left-handed and this could all be nonsense. I don't know. But it is a thread to pull on. It's something to investigate. It depends on how much physical work he is doing at work, but something to think about. Do you strength train? No. Okay. Kyle, we need to get you strength training. I'm so glad this is a goal of yours, that you are self-aware of this. I am not going to assign you all this bodybuilding stuff. I promise you can do 10 to 15 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. Do it right after your run and you'll be fine. Instead of running an extra mile, go ahead and spend 10 minutes with some strength training. It is going to make such a massive difference. I promise you. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? He says, eating enough fruits and veggies. Okay. Well, again, I'm happy that you are self-aware of that. So what are you going to do to change that? So a lot of people can start a marathon cycle and they get really excited and they're like, oh, I'm going to do Sunday meal prep. I'm going to make all this food. Sometimes they get way too ambitious and they don't stick to it. So what is something that you can do that is very sustainable? So what I like to do is every meal has a fruit or veggie. So we've got our protein, our starch, and our veggie, and that's the 3 building blocks to a meal. If you're missing one of those 3 legs on the stool, then you don't have a meal. What are you doing for snacking? Are you snacking on fruit? That should be your first choice. So lots of ways to sneak in fruits and veggies. You can put them all in a smoothie if you really want to, but really important for health, nutrition, and especially as a runner to get in all those antioxidants, nutrients, fiber that you need. So great goal, but I'd love to hear more about how you intend to fix the problem. What are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? He says, pushing through speed workouts and overcoming my mind when it says that's good enough. Ooh, I have been there. So pushing through speed workouts. So yes, I said before, we never want to have paces that are too fast, but I didn't say they shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be something that, you're falling down on the ground afterwards, but it should be something that takes effort, something that takes concentration, something that is a challenge. You are going to have to push yourself. You are. But we want to make sure that our mind is on board for this as well. So it sounds like Kyle has a very similar voice that I have in my head. So if you've heard me talk about negative Nancy, my voice is sweet and kind and tells me that I'm good enough, tells me that my family loves me, tells me all of these sweet things about myself that I could just slow down and I will still be a good person. Those are all very true things that I cannot argue with, right? But I want to argue with those things because I want to get better. I want to go beyond good enough. So I also talk about good enough is good enough, but you also have this voice that is shortchanging your real goals. So I suggest for Kyle that he work on naming his negative so that when that voice comes up that says, yeah, it's okay. You can quit. You can stop right now. That he says, oh, that is my negative voice. I don't know what he's going to name it. Maybe he names it Sally. I don't know. But he can say, hey, Sally, I understand that you think that that's good enough, but that's not what I really want. And he goes ahead and challenges himself. So naming your negative is a really great way to separate those negative voices, to get them out of your identity and separate from you, because then you see them as something that's not really you, not what you really want. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? Kyle says, to incorporate strength training into my weekly routine and run a marathon with less pain. Okay, we talked about the strength training. I'm so glad that he is going to be working that in. He wants to run a marathon with less pain. So I think we're still talking about the pain in the butt here. So if he does strength training for the next 3 months and he focuses on the piriformis, the glutes, does his glute bridges, single leg glute bridges, does his clamshells, maybe gets a resistance band to make those things a little harder, it is definitely going to improve the muscle. It's not 100% guaranteed with sciatica because, like I said, the nerve can be a little tricky, but I guarantee you that strength training is going to help in all areas. Might not completely eliminate the issue, but it will definitely improve it. Anything you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? He says, I like to go on bike rides, but I've never done it faithfully as cross training. So again, you do not have to do it. If you enjoy it, great. If you're kind of burnt out from running and you have an easy run and you'd rather go for an easy ride, great, do that. But again, you don't have to do that if you don't want to, or if you just can't fit it in. It's not that big of a deal. In Kyle's case, if he wants to bump up his aerobic capacity, but just can't handle the running with his piriformis issue, yeah, let's put some bike rides in. That will definitely help. But again, it is totally up to you. And I would rather you spend the time strength training than cross training. Okay, so I think I have enough information from Kyle to put together a plan for him for grandmas. We are going to have to play around with those paces a little bit. They might have to be adjusted as we go, but we want to start with them a little bit more conservative, not at his goal time and not at his pacing time for his half marathon, but somewhere in between, leaning towards conservative at first. We're going to start him off probably pretty conservative with the mileage, get him doing the PT work and the strength training work to get those glutes and all the other muscles strong for running. Well, that's it for today's episode of the PR Training Lab of the Planted Runner podcast. Of course, I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you find it helpful. And if you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live on the show, you've got to write an Apple Podcast review first, and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, the very best way to keep it going is completely free, and it takes 5 minutes. Just write an Apple Podcast review. Tell me and the world what you think, and you'll help boost this show's reach more than you can imagine. I read every single one, and I am immensely grateful to have your support. Have a great run today.
Women's Running Stories, where we explore the intersection between running and life. Because every woman who is committed to a running journey has a story to tell, and this is where you'll find those stories. I am host and producer Cherie Louise Turner. I'm a 53-year-old runner, and together with original music by musician and runner Cormac O'Regan, we bring these inspirational stories to life. Please join us to fuel your adventures.